good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whatever it is, as to paraphrase the Reduce Shakespeare Company's podcast opening. My name is Angie Sutton, Angie Fiedler Sutton. I go by she, her. This is the Keynote with Sam Max. Before we begin, I want to go over a few logistics. You're welcome to use the chat to talk to each other and share recommendations in a respectful manner. If you'd like to submit a question, please use the Q&A function or put a question mark before the question so it is obvious for the tech person and myself. There will be time for questions closer to the end of the session, but feel free to write them as you think of them. After the panel, the conversation can continue on the Discord channel for this panel. So without further ado, as I mentioned, I'm Angie Fiedler Sutton. In my spare time, I cover geeky pop culture for the website The Geeky Area. In fact, I had a chance to interview Sam at WonderCon earlier this year, but have not had a chance to put it on the website yet. Gestures at the world. Sam Max is a New York Times bestselling and Eisner-nominated author of books, comics, and video games. Her novels include Star Wars Jedi, Battle Scars, and The Unstoppable Wasp, Built on Hope. She's written for games like Call of Duty Vanguard, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and Marvel's Spider-Man, and her comics and graphic novels include Marvel Action, Captain Marvel, Critical Role, The Mighty Nine Origins, and Tell No Tales, Pirates of the Southern Seas. She's also on-air talent for networks like Dropout, thumbs up for Dropout, and The Nerdist. A Canadian in Los Angeles, she misses coffee crisp and bagged milk. Welcome to Rainbow Space Magic.
Thank you so much, Angie. It's great to see you again.
Yes. Now, this is going to be kind of like a Q&A, like our interview. The topic of this year's theme is basically writing with resistance. And so I guess the first question is, why is that important in today's world? Why should we, write queer characters and write resistance?
Yeah, I think that it really is more important than ever, because it's getting less easy to be open about who you are in public. And I think that it's starting to feel like a little scary again. And maybe you know, kids maybe don't want to come out or don't feel like they have anyone to talk to about how they feel about themselves or what they might be questioning. And I think it's really, as somebody who grew up in the 90s when it was also, you know, I don't think I saw a lesbian on television until I was 15. And even then it was Ellen. You know, there, there just wasn't a lot of representation. And so it took a lot of us a really long time to realize and or come to terms with our queerness. And what really helped me through that was finally finding that representation. For me, it was through webcomics. But it was that being able to see an example of other people being the way that I kind of on the inside thought that maybe I was. Suddenly it was like, oh, that's an option. I can be like that. Girls can be with other girls. When you see that in a book, it can be really impactful. And so I think that it's really important for us to tell those kind of stories now so that people know that they have a place to find refuge and community. And we've just got to get weirder. Like we just have to get weirder, as the world tells us to get less weird.
Now, especially in today's environment, it is unfortunately political to write about queer characters.
Mhm.
And it might be a little scary for people to kind of like put themselves out to there. What kind of advice or how do you get past that fear of, oh no, this is going to backfire, or oh no, I'm going to get lots of hate, that kind of stuff?
I kind of don't. I write gay books for children, and I'm from Canada. My family is still in Canada. I cross the border pretty frequently. Every time I cross the border, I wonder, is this the time when maybe I don't get to go across, or I don't get to come home, or I don't know. It is scary right now. And over the years, even in the 2010s, when things seemed seemingly more welcoming, accepting, like we were moving in a more positive direction. Even then, I wrote books and IPs that a lot of people feel really connected to and have a really special relationship with. And so when something happens in those IPs that they don't necessarily want or like or agree with politically, they can get quite upset about that. And oftentimes I've been on the receiving end of that upset. And I think that it no matter what advice I give you, it's going to be difficult. From a practical standpoint, my advice is don't look at it, don't listen to it. There's no reason to. It has nothing to do with you. At the end of the day, it has everything to do with them. um, it will only serve to hurt you. Like there's kind of no point. So my biggest advice is like don't Google yourself. Like you don't have to look at that stuff. It's not for you. It's only going to harm your mental health and it's not going to improve anything in your life. And the other part of that I will say is that we spend so much time talking about the negative aspect of it, about the hate you get online, about all that stuff. But like that has overwhelmingly like not really been my experience online. Like obviously that's happened to me, but that's not like the memorable part of my online experience as a queer creator, as a female creator, as an immigrant creator, like a white English speaking one. But still, like that's not been my experience. My experience has been overwhelmingly positive. I've met all of my best friends basically through the internet. I've gotten every job I've ever had, essentially, like through Twitter back in the day. Like I have built so many beautiful, loving, wonderful, warm communities and have found so many people who love my work, who work with me, who I'm like in beta groups with, who I'm in like writing circles with. Like there's been so much joy and positivity from sharing my story with the world. I used to say that if I got one letter from like and one email from like a 13-year-old girl who could say like my book made an impact on her, that it would be worth it. And I have been so fortunate to have that and like so much more. When I go to conventions and people come up to me and they're like, I felt seen through your work, or it made me realize it was okay to be ace, or anything like that. Like that's my prevailing takeaway from doing the work that I do. So yeah, there are always gonna be haters, but if they're not mad, if those guys aren't mad at the stuff that you're making, you're probably doing it wrong.
Mhm.
I'm probably
Now,
doing it wrong. If they're like loved this book, I'm like, oh damn, I gotta pivot. Like,
I will put myself out there. Part of the reason I had reached out to you is because as a female journalist, you have been an inspiration to me. I've seen you go through the all the
thank
highs
you.
and lows of the past however many years with
Thank you.
what
And
people are
I'm
very
sorry.
keen and
My internet
earnest.
presence, like you didn't follow me shit posting for 10 years. I'm so sorry. But I appreciate it. I
But
really
and
do.
so it's yeah, it's kind of seeing that you don't let it bother you has kind of let me go, oh, it's not gonna bother. I'm not gonna let it bother me, kind of thing. But let's get to the writing. We have a lot of writers of sci-fi and fantasy in our audience. Um, I know this is a broad question. I know it varies depending on the project, but kind of go into your process of how you approach
Mm.
a project, what your process is.
Yeah. So mostly I write for IP, which means that like I've written some original stuff. My book Tell No Tales, which is like right up there. IP is my big original project, but mostly I write for IP. Star Wars, Star Trek, My Little Pony, Transformers, that kind of stuff. I play with other people's paper dolls all the time, right? Um, and what that means is I have to get a lot of permission to do anything before I even start writing. So because of the way that I've worked for the past 10 years, having to work with licensors and IP holders and needing that kind of like sign off, I'm a big outliner. I have a lot of respect for pantsers, but I'm a plotter because I've had to be. So for me, I always start with a core concept, a really high level idea. Oftentimes that looks like sending like 1 to 3 like individual paragraphs to an IP holder when they're like, pitch us something. And I'm kind of like, okay, here's 3 ideas. They go to the mall, they find a demon, they whatever. Like, so you start with like, I often start with just a small idea, which is basically like, what do I want this character to be learning or experiencing? Like in the case of Carol Danvers, it would be like she's a workaholic and she needs to learn how to do that less. Or with Peter Parker, it's like he needs to figure out how to maybe also not be such a workaholic. I'm starting to sense a theme in my work, maybe something I need to bring to therapy. But anyway, like you start with like what do you want them to learn? How can I get them to learn it? And then I'll expand that into a full outline. I really like to use a program. You can use a free version of it. I think I subscribe, but there's a program called Plotter that I love. Plottr. Oh, someone in chat said, "Have I been on Dropout?" Yeah, I've been on Dropout. I've been on actually like 2 or 3 times. They're great. Love those guys. Love Brennan. But anyway, so I use a program called Plotter, Plottr. Yes, we have some Plotter lovers in chat. It's basically like like your murder board that you would make in real life. Like if you got like a whiteboard where you put the sticky notes on the wall and you can kind of make your like sticky note journey of your post-its of whatever, like your characters are doing and all that. You can do all of that on the computer. And what's really cool about it is that they also have templates to get you started. So like the 3-act structure of Save the Cat, like whatever story structure you happen to be evangelizing about at the moment for you, whatever works for you. You can even make your own story structures and put it in as a template. And then it helps you like plot out beat by beat what's happening in your story, what's happening with all of your character arcs, all that stuff. Once I have it all plotted out in Plotter, and I've usually, hopefully at that point, gotten my outline accepted by my licensor or whatever, then I'll start to write it. If I'm writing a novel, I'm going to be using a program called Scrivener,
Scrivener, I think it's called.
Scrivener, which is so great because it lets you break your project up into like little chapters. And I love that because I love tiny, manageable goals. As someone with ADHD, it can be very intimidating for me to think about writing a 130,000 word book is like, oh, I can never do that. But I could definitely write like a 500 word section, and for me as a plot, like you can export directly from Plotter into Scrivener, and it'll like space it all out for you based on the beats that you made in Plotter. Like it's so great. Let it make your life easier. Comic book scripts we write mostly in Microsoft Word, or I do. Some people write in Final Draft. There's weirdly like no overall accepted format for comic book scripts, so you're just kind of all cowboys for themselves. And game writing is largely done, if not in Final Draft or like a proprietary software, then in Excel spreadsheets.
Mhm.
Glamorous.
Now I'm going to touch on one of the topics of one of our other panels. Talk about that fine line between having queer characters and having characters that just happen to be queer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that I think what you're getting at is maybe that the first is like a story about being queer versus the
Mhm.
second is a story about anything else that just happens to include queer characters. I think that that is what I tend to write. I love a queer story. I love a coming out story. I love a story about figuring out who you are. I love a first girlfriend story. I love all that stuff. Um, I think there's a really important place for it. It's just not really what I have gravitated towards writing for myself, even though I do really enjoy consuming it. So for me, often it's just about like, these are cool stories about superheroes who just happen to be queer. Their friends happen to be queer. They happen to be ace or whatever. Because that's sort of what my life and my experience looks like. I have a lot of friends and they all are like normal weirdos who all just like happen to be queer also. And it does inform who we are and our opinions and our personalities and the way we dress and like all of that stuff. Of course it does. But it's not like, it's not the only thing that we are. We are so many other things. We all contain multitudes. So that for me, that's really important. And I think that it's like cool to tell stories where that's not the focus, but it is just like totally normalized. That's the kind of stuff that I really like to make is nobody remarks on it. It's not a big deal. It just sort of is because like straight people don't have to go through all that rigmarole in their books. They just get to like start making out or whatever, like or looking at her magnificently joggling bobbies as she walks down the stairs or whatever male writers are doing these days. I don't know, but you know what I
Yes,
mean.
yes.
Like they can just
Male
do that.
right.
They don't have to
Yes,
be like, oh, and by the way, I was straight. Like, fine, okay. I shouldn't
Now
have to do
you
that shit either. That's how I feel.
exactly. Now you said you write primarily for IPs, and I know this is another one that it probably varies, but inevitably, are the characters already queer? Do you add the queerness to them, or does it just depend?
It so depends on the IP holder and also what they're asking me for, and also how open they are to things. So to your point, it does really vary. For Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars, which is the book that I wrote set in the Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor universe of those games, for those books, which like largely focus on Marin being for that book, which largely focuses on Marin being queer in a lot of ways, Respawn came to me with a one sheet of everything they wanted me to cover in the book. And one of their top line items was that they had always intended for Marin to be queer. They didn't really have an opportunity to cover that in the first game because the game is not really about her. It's about Cal Kestis. It's not like there wasn't really a good space. Like in video games are all about action, having fun and playing. There wasn't really a good space for them to like stop the game to suddenly have a conversation, kind of to our previous point where Marin's like, by the way, I also date girls. Like that's not really didn't feel organic to the world. It felt really shoehorned and like, or I assume so, but like as someone who has written for games before, is my assumption, right? Something like that is really hard to fit into the game organically when there isn't like a reason to have it. Like we weren't showing Marin having a relationship in that game, whatever. So they really wanted me to canonize that in the book. So that was an ask. There have been other times where I have sort of swung for the fences a little bit. I wrote a Transformers series where I got to like invent the newest Transformer, and I gave her two moms. I gave her RC and Greenlight as their moms, and kind of like hinted at the two of them being together, but pretty blatantly. And Hasbro was like totally fine with it. They were like, "That's great. That sounds great. No problem." Like they, sometimes you can kind of like make those suggestions, and if the IP holder has like looser rules or is chill about it, or maybe it's something they've already been thinking about or have already suggested in other things and they kind of don't care. Then there have been other IPs where I've been like, hey, this is what would be best for the story. I think this would be really interesting. Um, Say you have like, oh, I see you have a superhero with an undercut, and you just put out a movie where she's like all shown in bisexual lighting. I think it would be really cool. It's cool that like I think it would be really cool to have a story where maybe like she's at a ballet school, say, and she falls in like there's like an enemies to lovers plot line with like rivals at like that would be great. And the in that case, the IP holder might say something like, oh, if we don't introduce a canon moment like that in the comics first, that it's not technically canon. So we can't actually make that canon in a project that's not a comic. Or they might say something like, we actually don't think that that's appropriate for children. Or you just never know what you're going to get, like it just depends on who's in charge that day, how much they care about queer characters, what their vision for the character is. Like there are lots of reasons why something like that might not work out. But there have definitely been times where I've also felt like kind of antagonized about it, and that sucks. And there are definitely projects that I've chosen to walk off of. And there are other times where it works out and it's all fine. And there are other times where I've just sort of been like, okay, I understand, and we'll pivot. But it does really depend. But I will say that like I had so many, for me, like especially working with Lucasfilm, they have never said shit to me. Like Lucasfilm has been the most amazing partner to work with around all of this stuff. They are so committed to not only pushing diversity forward like now, but also to like repairing the mistakes of the past. Like you can't say sand people anymore. That shit is like verboten. Like that, you know what I mean? Like they're being really good about it and it's really important to them. And I think that's really cool. And so there are, I think that it's the oftentimes people think like, oh, it must be so hard at these big corporations, but like the times they are changing, it's been really nice.
I'll use this little time to plug something I'm working on. At LA Comic Con, I interviewed Ave Roque, who is
Oh,
non-binary themselves and was the voice of the first non-binary character in an animated show by Disney, The Owl House. So
that's
hopefully that'll be coming
amazing.
up here in the next week or so too. So it was really fun interviewing them. They were on a panel about transmasculine representation in media, and I thought that was a very good
That
panel.
sounds so good.
Now, talk about the overlap between, we have a lot of, this is speculative fiction, fantasy slash science fiction.
Mm,
Why do you think queer people are drawn to those genres?
I think that it's appealing to craft a world in which you get to make the rules. It's a lot harder, I think, often in a contemporary book to justify ignoring certain things. Like I don't know, I think you kind of feel like if you're setting your book contemporaneously, there has to be a coming out scene, or you have to deal with like, oh, Jim feels weird about lesbians or whatever. Like there has to be some of that. Whereas in a fantasy world or a sci-fi world, it's really like you're already inventing dragons, you can also invent not homophobia. Like you can kind of just like do whatever, and I think that that is really appealing. And I also think that like oftentimes we're sort of like traumatized to death by reality. And the last thing that a lot of us, I think, want to do is like go and read a book where like someone's being traumatized in the exact same way that like we're being traumatized in real life all the time. Like I would much rather read an allegory for queerness that's about dragons. You know what I mean? Like just feels a little bit like obviously I'm getting all the same emotions, but it just feels like less um triggering, I guess, or like I don't know. I want something different. Um, but I also think that there's a lot of like validity, and I have a lot of respect for people who can like find catharsis in reading contemporary like narratives and stuff like that when it's more dealing with like more difficult material. But I think that for a lot of us, we want that. Either we want escapism or we want a way to deal with those feelings of conflict with a bit of a like separation, that separation of metaphor, that distance that can help us process our feelings around reality a little bit more easily, which of course I think is like the honestly like the point. of storytelling
Mhm.
in a lot of ways.
Now, you sort of already touched on this with the bisexual lighting. Gotta love that bisexual lighting. Um, you cover pop culture as well. Talk about a kind of, I guess, a brief history and kind of what your thoughts are on queer coding in literature and in media, and kind of where do you think that's going, kind of stuff.
I think that queer coding has gotten a really bad rap through the 2010s, but again, like I am a 90s kid, and it was really important. It was really important to a lot of us because you simply weren't allowed to not queer code, to just have it be queer, like was simply not allowed. If you wanted that, and if you were a creator, if you were a writer, if you were a performer who wanted to show that, your only option was to sneak it in. And so for a lot of us, we grew up having to understand what those like dog whistle, but not bad, it not in a bad way. Like, you know what I mean? What those signifiers, what that symbolism was, what those like what to look for, what to like a truffle pig, like what to hunt out in our um 8 season sci-fi drama that we're obsessed with or whatever. That like the you know those two boys are gay, but like they can't say it, but I think they know. And so
Oh,
for a lot of
Sherlock
us, like it
Croft.
was, yeah, it was really important to us. And um it was the only way for a really long time to include queerness in your stories. But I think that once it became more like acceptable in a mainstream way to put actually queer characters into stories, it started to feel pretty shitty. Um, when all of a sudden they weren't. And to me, I think that like queer baiting and queer coding are two like very different things. Like one is done really, like one feels malicious and one does not, you know? And I think that that's more of the distinction that we have to draw now. Queer coding really feels like something that was like benevolent and was speaking directly to queers. Like I often think about, um, I'm thinking about characters like Ursula,
Mhm.
stuff like that, where it was like on
It was
us.
based on a drag queen.
Yeah, exactly. And so, um, yeah, I still think it's really important to have that knowledge and information so that when you do go back and watch older media, which I think a lot of younger people are doing now because like we're being denied 15 season junky sci-fi shows with a lot of filler, which is where all the gold is, by the way.
Mhm.
It's in the filler episodes. Like that shit doesn't exist like the children long for the X-Files. Like
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And we're not providing them with that anymore. So we have to give them the tools to be able to go back and like decode queer coding. But also if you're
Mhm.
making stuff today, like don't be a fucking coward.
Mhm. Um, Now, in terms of, you had mentioned you were writing for children. You've written for children, and one of our earlier panels was about writing for middle grade and young adults.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself kind of using different muscles, I guess, in a way, when you're writing for a different that age level versus writing for adults?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that I think that's probably I have a career that feels kind of, I think, probably disjointed from an outsider's perspective. Books, comics, video games, children, middle grade, adult, sci-fi, fantasy, contemporary. Like I'm sort of all over the place, but it's because all I do is write. That's like all I do for a living. Like that's how I get money. Like that's all I do. And so and I'm not like I'm not I don't have like a mansion in the hills or whatever. Like I'm not I haven't had like a massive amount of success, right? I'm a working writer. And so I think a lot of the times I am trying to stop myself from getting bored, and writing across mediums, across genres, across um, age lines helps everything, even though it's all still writing, everything still feels fresh. And so there definitely is a different approach. I mean, when I'm writing adult fiction, you can get a lot more into like, it can be just a lot more a little bit more like in your face. It can have a little bit more mentions of like intimacy. Like you can make it horny a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, and that's fun, and I love that. And that feels really like important to the adult queer experience too, is figuring out like what do I like and what does feel good to me and who am I excited by and like you can kind of think I often try to think about it more that way, about like it's more like in your feelings, like it feels more like grounded in your interiority in like adult books, whereas in children's books, or like middle grade books, I find myself often writing from a place of like established relationship. Um, Showing couples that have already been together for a long time, like when they're 14, like they've been dating since middle grade, or like characters that already know this about themselves. Again, because I'm not super interested in writing coming out stories. I do like if it's for younger kids, I'm dealing with a lot of more like established relationships often. And just showing like they do a peck on the kiss just like your parents do, like, or a peck on the lips just like your parents do at the end of the day, or like it's just I try to like make it super normalized in that way for when I'm writing like in middle grades and in kids, like really just um even if it's not the main character necessarily experiencing that, or if it is, it's like not remarkable to them in any particular way. It's totally normal and a part of their normal life, and it's like not really remarked upon. So I think like those are some of the, yeah, that's really interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that question before.
Well, that's good. A reminder that I am paying attention to the chat, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. You had mentioned that the part of the reason you do have variety is to kind of keep yourself from getting bored and burnt out. That as a writer myself, although I tend to write nonfiction more than fiction, that's something I'm always interested in is how writers yes, this is your job, you get paid for it, but there are a lot other easier jobs out there. You could go be data entry, kind of thing. What do you do to kind of make sure that it stays fun, it stays entertain, it stays like something that you want to keep doing?
It's really hard. And it's especially hard when it goes from being a fun thing to being a job. Like, because at the end of the day, I'm so lucky to do this as a job. I can't believe that I get it. Like, it's so fortunate. But a job is still a job, right? And then there's like the pressure that comes along with that. There's the pressure of I need to eat. There's the pressure of I need this to be good. I want this to be good. I want to make good art. But also, I have to make good art on a freaking deadline because there's an animation studio in Korea that's not waiting on my scripts. Like I better get that shit done. And that's like, it's the push and pull right between like capitalism and creating art and how do you live in that zone. And honestly, it's difficult. Like I honestly find it difficult. I have a day job. I still have a day job at the end of the day. I have to go work 8 hours and then I'm doing my writing like on the side, in my free time, in my spare time, when I'm not at conventions or whatever. Which is like it's difficult. So for me, the answer is always um consuming, like taking breaks to consume. And a lot of people are always like, when I get writer's block, what should I do? Should I push through? And for me, it's always like if you're having difficulty creating, it's because you're not consuming. Like you need to be nourishing yourself with good stories, um, with narratives and with characters that excite you. Like you got to be hyper fixated on something. You got to have an obsession. Like you got to be consuming things that inspire you. Everything is derivative of something else. Like literally everything is a fan fiction essentially in one way or another, right? What I do for a living certainly is. But even people creating original stuff, like everything is inspired, everything is derivative. And if you're not getting inspired by stuff, like if you don't have a thing that you're excited to get to at the end of the day, or like, oh my God, I love this character, or if you haven't gone back to your favorite book series from your childhood, or a TV show that you haven't seen since 1997 that you remember loving, like I so encourage you to go back. That's like an exercise that I've been doing lately is going back to like a lot of stuff that I loved as a teenager and rewatching it and trying to dissect like why did I love it? Why did it have such a big impact on me then? What can I pull out of that for my own work? Like go and open a book, open a comic, like go be inspired. That's part of the work, even though it seems like you're goofing off, but you're not.
So, do you recommend, something in the same genre, or do you recommend kind of staying away from that?
I think you can do anything you want, honestly. Like I think it's totally up to you and how influenceable you are. Like until I still haven't watched Our Flag Means Death because I didn't want it to influence like my pirate writing at all. So I stayed away from that. Um, but at the same time, like you don't have to do that. Like I think you know what I mean. But I also think that there is a lot of value in stepping out of your current genre and finding inspiration from other narratives. Like I think that that is super valuable and it's something that I do a lot. Yeah, if things are too close, it does kind of make me nervous.
Now, one of the things I like asking authors when I interview them is kind of tell me the story of the moment you realized either, hey, I'm good at this, or hey, I can make a living at this.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Boy. I still don't think I'm very good at it. I have a super bad imposter syndrome. I think like most writers. Well, for me, I mean, honestly, like um hitting the New York Times bestseller list was like the bucket list item for me. Like it was so big. Um that felt really validating, and my Eisner nomination felt really validating. Um but those came quite late in my career, like within the last 2 years, and I've been doing this for a decade. So, but I think like maybe early on, it was when I was able to quit my job, like my full-time job for the first time to just write. That was when I was kind of like, oh, I think that this might be like something that I can do. But I want to say super transparently, because people are not often transparent about that. At that time, I lived in Canada, so I had free socialized health insurance that I did not need a job in order to have. Easy to quit job. Two, I was living with a boyfriend at the time who had a full-time job. And so I knew I had to fall back. Like if my money didn't come through, we are going to be okay. And I think it's really important because I know there are a lot of writers out there who are like, I'm a full-time writer. Their husband makes 7 figures and they're not going to tell you that shit. But that's
Mm.
important to know. It's okay if you're struggling because they might have somebody in the background who's making pasta for them. Or say, if you're a middle-aged man who runs a video game company, you probably have a wife at home who doesn't have a job and is your domestic slave, and is raising your children for you, or whatever the case may be. I don't know, like, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Or in
important.
Thoreau's case, have your mother do your laundry.
Or your mom's doing your laundry. Like, it's just important to recognize that, like, I was privileged in a lot of ways to be able to do that. And
Mhm.
I really want to recognize that.
Now, the most important question. I saw your cat walk through. What is the cat's name?
Her name is Tabitha. She is perfect.
Get to the vital questions. No.
She's a snowshoe Siamese, which is like a very special kind of Siamese. And I was named after Samantha from Bewitched. So she's
Oh,
named
well,
after
of
Samantha's
course.
daughter from Bewitched. She's my little familiar. And she actually had a disease when she was 1.5 years old called FIP, which is 100% fatal, and was cured by drugs created for the coronavirus. Shocking.
Okay.
And it was like a really traumatic and horrible thing that we went through for like a year, and now she's okay and she's gonna live a long life, hopefully. But that's my little buddy. So
Now,
get your cats tested. Go ahead.
exactly. Now, your audience, our audience is from every level, from starting writers to people like yourself. So, what kind of tips or tricks would you give the people who are just starting out? What kind of advice do you typically give out?
This is honestly applicable to writers at any stage of their journey, including myself. I need to hear this all the time still. But the key to writing is writing something, but actually finishing it and then putting it somewhere where people can see it and starting the next thing. Most people who say they want to be writers will not start writing. They'll just say they want to. If you're able to start writing, you're already ahead of like 85% of people who say they want to be writers. Of those 85% of people, maybe 1% is actually going to finish something. Finishing something is really, really hard. So if you say you want to sit down, if you say you want to write something and then you finish making it, you're already ahead of like, I'm bad at math. What does that put me at 91%? Whatever. You're ahead of like most people at that point who say they want to be writers. And the thing is that like there is an unlimited amount of page space. The gates are down. You can publish whatever you want, wherever you want. You don't have to wait for someone to do it for you. You can put your webcomic on Tumblr. You can create a podcast that you make a Patreon for. You can publish your fan works on AO3. There's nothing stopping you, except for yourself, which I'm very familiar with. But we, as also like speaking as someone who does hire like freelancers now as well, and like my day job and stuff, there's always a need for writers. The content vacuum is also greater than ever. There is always a need for more. People are hungry for more stories, especially niche stories that like not a lot of people are making. You are the only one who can tell your particular story. You are the only person who has your voice, and we need your voice. But I, as someone who is hiring creatives, I don't know what you have to say, what your perspective is, or how you say it, what your unique voice is, what your unique perspective is, what unique thing you're bringing to the table, which you all have, by the way. But I can't know what it is unless you've made something and have put it on the internet so that I can see it, or, published it wherever in a short story anthology, a short comic anthology. Like, I can't know. People can't know what you're bringing to the table unless you put it on the table, unless you have something finished that you can put on the table. I need to be able to see that. The industry needs to be able to see that. And then what you're going to find is like people are interested in that because the big corporations are not, they're telling stories for the masses. They're not telling stories for like our niche communities. But the thing about our niche communities is they're actually huge and they have a ton of money. And then people are going to start to read your stuff. And then the corporations are going to go, that thing is making a lot of money. I should have that money. And then they'll come and take it from you. And that's great because then you'll make a lot of money. And then you can go make something else. You know what I mean? Like, but that's how this works in the end. So what you have to do is, unfortunately, you have to make something and finish it and then put it on the internet. And that is really hard. But it's the thing that I would say puts you ahead of basically everybody else.
Beck has a great question. Have you dealt with any changes to the industry due to AI use?
Sure, I don't work in video games anymore. The industry has contracted, they were saying, what, 17%? I would now, with this EA stuff that's happening, I would say we're going to be looking at like a contraction of almost a quarter in the whole industry. Like, Hollywood is not hiring. Los Angeles is dead. It's a really difficult time to make stories professionally right now because we are in this horrible AI bubble moment where all of these companies are like, well, I don't need to pay artists. I can just get Grok or whatever to fucking make a movie, I guess. But like, I feel quite strongly that like this bubble is going to pop and like no one wants to consume something that, why should I spend the time consuming someone that nobody bothered to spend the time making? Like, people are not interested in that. People are not interested in consuming stories that were not made by a human. All these tech bros just see a way to fast cash, but they fundamentally misunderstand the human experience. But unfortunately, we really are in the midst of this, like, I mean, there's a recession and there's this AI bubble, and we really have to ride it out. So like right now, things are really, really difficult. It is more difficult than it has been in the last decade to find success creatively through traditional structures because there are so few jobs that studios are only giving jobs to known showrunners who have had shows before. Those showrunners are only giving jobs to their friends. Same can be said across like a variety of industries. And so this is the time where you have to be doing things independently. I work for a totally independently run company right now. They have no corporate overlords. Like, you have to make your own stuff. You have to be making your own anthologies. You have to be publishing your own games on Twine, Itch.io. You should be making your own webcomics. You have to be making your own podcasts. You have to be making your own Patreons. Like, this is how we have to do it right now. And things will change and crystallize into whatever is next soonish, but not yet. Maybe not for the next few years still. So yeah, it fucking sucks. Is the answer. It sucks. It sucks and I hate it. And I'm glad that the lawsuits are starting to happen, because that's going to expedite the process of like getting this shit off our plates quicker, especially now that Disney's involved. The authors are all getting involved in like this big lawsuit. So we're going to start to see consequences for these folks soon, I think. But yeah, it's hard right now. It's really scary. I'm not going to lie.
Um, I just got the 10-minute alert, so I'm gonna try and wrap things up and then have you tell everybody kind of where they can
Yeah.
find you and whatnot.
And if
But
anybody has any more audience questions too, now's the
oh
time. Like,
yeah,
drop them in chat. I would love to answer them.
well, and like I said, we also are going to continue the conversation in the Discord by all means. Marketing, get your stuff out there. How do you do that nowadays, especially with algorithms being biased and whatnot?
Good Lord. Also really difficult. As a creator, I think one of the more difficult things about being a creator these days is that you're not only expected to be a good creator, you are also expected to be great on camera, to be a great publicist for yourself, to be a great marketer, to have wonderful connections, to appeal to folks online, to be traditionally pretty, so that people will watch your TikToks, like, and like, I don't want to make TikToks. If I wanted to be a TikToker, I'd go be a TikToker. Like, that's the thing. And dare I say, there are a lot of people who are great at TikTok who want to translate that into writing books who should stick to TikTok. Like, they're discrete skill sets, and there's nothing wrong with that. I could never do what the Instagram girlies do. I could never do what the TikTok girlies do. To me, that's the most difficult. That's so difficult. Like I find that I'm an autistic introvert. Like I find it really difficult to put myself on camera every day. Part of the reason it took me so long to come out is because I was so desperate to appeal to the male gaze after I received a lot of online criticism in my 20s that was like, you're just a man-hating, hairy-legged dyke that no man would ever want, blah, blah, blah. And so I subconsciously somewhere was like, fine, I'm going to be the hottest straight bitch you've ever seen. Like, I'll prove you wrong. And I can still hate men about it. Like, you know what I mean? And I did that and I was great at it. But it was like, that takes a lot out of you. And I think especially for queer creators, it takes a lot out of you to be so visible and to be so seen, like all the time. Putting yourself out there puts yourself at risk in a lot of ways and all that stuff. So it's really hard. I feel like I'm saying that a lot in this chat. Like I find this part of it really difficult because like again, with like all the changes in the industry right now, I feel like there really is this expectation, like you better have 1 million TikTok followers or you better have like a big Instagram following and whatnot. But I really do feel strongly that as much as people say all of that stuff and it's important to build your personal brand, and I do feel like that's true, like you do want to try to build a bit of a following or build connections online. Like that's honestly what I would say most of all is more important than building like a digital following is making digital connections. Finding people above you who you look up to is important. Connecting with them from like a place of authenticity, sure. But more important is like reaching out to your cohort, to the people who are going to be coming up at the same time as you, who are at the same level as you, who are, trying to query an agent at the same time or trying to put their first book on submission at the same time. Like find those people, form that community of beta readers, of because those are all the people that are going to be able to like, you're all going to be able to help each other out as you come up together. Like that I think is more important. Because you're going to need connections to editors, you're going to need connections to agents and other writers. Like that goes such a long way. And the other part that I would say is at the end of the day, like good writing does still win out. Like if you send something to someone or if you put something online that is undeniably fun to read and people want, like that is still what matters more than anything at the end of the day. And I do think we are starting to see even a lot of backlash and pushback towards people who like are all style and no substance. I think people are starting to get really fucking sick of that. And I don't know. My only hope with AI is that maybe it kills short form video forever because we won't be able to tell what's AI generated slop anymore and what isn't. No one's going to watch it. And then we all have to go back to marketing the old fashioned way. I don't know. But maybe.
Now,
But yeah,
where can
so it's
people?
like I would say connect directly with people. It has more impact.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you or want to follow your work, where can they find you?
I'm so easy to find. I'm just my name on almost everything. I'm at Sam Meggs, SAMMAGGS on Blue Sky, on Twitter, but I'm not really there much anymore. On Instagram, I'm on TikTok as Sam Writes a Lot. I have a lot of good like video game writing content on there if that's something you're interested in. And yeah, if you guys are tabletop fans, go pick up Daggerheart because I also work at Critical Role, so you can find me there too.
Any other questions before I have one more final question, but I'm going to make sure that
Chat,
the
chat,
audience doesn't
chat.
have anything. And in the chat, I don't want to. Um,
TikTok is the
this is
bane of
kind
my
of
existence. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that.
um, this is kind of a reiteration of my first question, but I want the gut reaction. First thoughts. Why do what you do?
I didn't hear what you said because Tabitha showed up to scream in my ear there for a
Of
second. I'm
course,
sorry. What
of
was
course.
that?
Gut reaction. First thoughts out of your words. Why do you do this?
Oh, I do this for me and the girls like me when I was 15 years old. Um, I didn't know who I was. I didn't see myself. I had to make a lot of choices in my 20s and 30s that maybe my life would have looked a lot different if I had had someone at 15 tell me that it was okay to be a nerd and that it was okay to be gay. My life would have looked a lot differently. And I would like to provide that. I would like to give, I when I wrote my first book, I was always like, I want to write the book that I wish I'd had when I was 15. And that's like what I continue to do is I continue to write the stuff that I wish I wish there had been a gay Star Wars, like all the stuff that I wish that I had had that would have had a dramatic impact on my real life. Um, Stories matter, and I know it sounds cliche these days to say representation matters, but like it does. It still does. And like to your first question, to your point, like maybe more than ever right now. Um, and so even when it feels hard, I've had a lot of trouble creating lately. I just want to dissociate, but that's usually when you got to do it more than ever.
Exactly. I just put the chat into the Discord. Also, a reminder that when I invent that 48-hour day, I'm going to write up that interview I did for WonderCon. Actually, I'm taking some time off end of October, early of November to try and get caught up on all my writing. And once that's
Good
posted,
for
I'll make
you.
sure to post that into the Discord as well. Because I know there were some questions in there that I didn't get a chance to today that we talked about. So there's definitely more stuff in that than we talked here. Um, Let me see. I want to thank
My cat's eating
Sam.
something. I'm so sorry. Thank you guys.
No
I'll be right
worries.
back in 1 second.
Cats.
She got into my breakfast leftovers. Unholy terror, cats.
Yes, one of my cats is a goblin in disguise. So I understand. Okay, well, I want to thank Sam X for such an interesting Q&A. You can, as I mentioned, you can join the conversation in the Discord and join us for our next panel. Thank you for participating today, and we'll see you at the next panel. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
guys for coming. It was so nice to see all of you. And thank you, Angie.
Oh, yeah.